Hello and welcome to my toy reviews. This is actually going to be the first toy reviewed on the channel and the way to jumpstart everything. Today we're taking a look at Bandai's 2001, the GMK version of Baragon. As you can see here, he is in the 8-inch scale actually as part of the Movie Monster series of figures. They used to do a couple 8-inch figures, even though nowadays they really do just the 6-inch line. And this guy, of course, was the first real holy grail of a figure for me. I remember seeing this guy all over eBay when I was younger, and Baragon being one of my favorite monsters, I had to have him, but he was just too pricey when I was younger. So, let's start with just a little brief history of Baragon. Baragon made his first appearance in 1965's Frankenstein Conquers the World. We just covered that on the podcast, Henry and I, on It Came From a Monster Movie. It was a great film, but definitely dated. He made a couple minor appearances later on, namely the biggest one was in Destroy All Monsters in 1968, and a couple TV cameos like on Dragon Ball later in the 90s. I think everybody's seen it at this point, but there was that little scene of him popping out of the bushes. Outside of that, he did have a couple stolen roles. In Destroy All Monsters, the scene where Gorosaurus pops out of the ground was originally supposed to be Baragon, but as we will talk about in some of the Ultraman figure reviews later on the channel, the suit from Baragon was used for a lot of monsters over on that series and was not in the greatest condition, so they subbed in, of all monsters, Gorosaurus, the T-Rex. His first major role outside of that was in 2001's GMK, where he of course gets the shit beat out of him and blasted to oblivion. Anyways though, let's get right into the review. So, to start, let's talk about my grading scale. As you'll see in plenty of my upcoming reviews with figures and models, I like data, I like numbers, I like forcing things into boxes to organize them and compare them against each other. So we're going to take a look at these figures on a scale of 1 to 5 in 3 different categories. Of course, 1 being the lowest, just horrible, 5 being the best, incredible. And the categories we're going to take a look at are the sculpt and detail, paint apps and color, and then the articulation or the posing. And this one, of course, is in there for figures like these, where we have some articulation, but it's not really meant to be articulated, it's more just meant to stand there. And then there are some figures, of course, like Beasts of the Mesozoic, where they're more highly articulated, or something like PNSO for dinosaur figures, where they're more meant to be statues. In addition, I'm going to add or remove a couple points here and there depending on accessories, the construction of the figure depending on how fragile or well put together it is, little factors like that. And finally, I'm going to add up all those numbers, divide them by 3 to get our final grade for the figure. So, finally, let's start getting into the review itself. I'm going to start with the sculpt of this guy. So just looking at this, we can see the claws are beautifully sculpted, nice and accurate to what we see in the movie. Kind of bluntish, but nice and sharp still despite that, but looks like they're worn from digging. Same with the back feet. Claws are absolutely gorgeously sculpted out. You can see here, he's got scales on his belly, on his little paws, the front paws and back legs, all the way up his neck, onto his face. Just gorgeously sculpted scaling. He's got his little bumps along his back as well. Looking at his face, he's got his cute little puppy dog muzzle, his nose, his expressive eyes and ears. Everything is just absolutely gorgeous on this guy. If we take a look here at the ridges on the back, you'll see that they're nice and accurate to what you see in the movie. He has a little line of spikes going down the middle, but otherwise these just Baragon ridges, which I never quite understood what they were based on, but I love it despite that. Makes him look so cool. Take a look at his tail. Just everything about this guy is beautiful. Really the only thing I can fault it on as far as the sculpt and detail on this guy is just the mouth. The teeth are really nicely sculpted, but he does have that kind of plastic chunk in there that, you know, a lot of the older figures had. I see some new figures with this as well, but it's a nice way for them to save time on the sculpting, but it just does not look amazing. But I'm gonna go ahead and give this guy a 5. For what he is, he looks dead accurate to the movie version, with the exception of the mouth. Taking a look at the color now, we can see he's got this beautiful yellow on his horn, as well as the extra horns going down his back. He's got the same kind of yellow, but more of like a beigey color on the claws and toenails, which I really appreciate that they went for a similar color, but it differs a little bit. And this, of course, is a lot more true to the film again, where the claws look like they've been used for digging. They're a little duller, and the horn less so. It's a little bit more vibrant. He's got beautiful red eyes. See there with the sculpt on the pupils as well. Looks exactly like how he did in the movie. We also, take a look here at the back, have a bit of a maroon color going down on his back a little bit. That again sort of emphasizes the earthy color of the figure overall, but draws away a little bit from the just plain brown that he has over the rest of his body, giving it a really, really nice contrast. Also, in the movie, they call him the Red Godzilla for a little bit before they realize that he is one of the guardian monsters, so it's nice to see that he does have some red on him, since most of him is brown. Take a look here at the belly as well. The belly, same thing, very accurate to what we see in the movie. Just kind of this beigey color all over there on the scales. Gives him a little bit of counter shading, which is really nice. I think we're going to go ahead and give this guy a 5 for the paint apps on here as well. Just like with the sculpt and detail, it's pretty much point for point what you see in the movie. It is amazing. There's hardly any bleed anywhere. Finally, we're going to take a look at the articulation, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, but this is just one of those regular Bandai vinyl figures. It has some articulation, namely in the legs, the arms, and the tail, but it's not really meant to have a lot, so I am grading it a little bit weighted because of that. That said, he does have these awesomely articulated ears. That Baragon is one of the more expressive monsters, in my opinion, in all of Godzilla. And with these ears, you can really make this guy emote. You know, with him just being in a neutral stance, having not a lot going on over the rest of his body for expression, you can really bring out some expression just with the ears alone. So I'm gonna give it a 4. It's not much, it's really just the basic articulation, but the little ears, I do really like that, and I think it's so fitting of the character itself. So I'm not grading him on this, but let's talk a little bit about sizing as well. This version of Baragon measures about 6 inches at the tip of the ear, but I like to measure him to the head where he's a little under 6 inches. Again, just because the ears can be posed and you're probably not always going to have them in that upward position. He fits a lot better with the 8-inch scale figures. I do wish that I had an 8-inch scale GMK Godzilla to compare him against, because he looks amazing next to that figure. You can find plenty of those online if you are interested. But I do think that he scales nicely next to the 6-inch figures as well. As you can see here, just a couple of the vinyl figures that I have to compare him against. Just a little variety so you get a sense. He does look a little big for Baragon, but a lot of the 6-inch scale figures are wonky scaling anyways, so again, I don't really think too much about it. It doesn't bother me at all. I never look at him on the shelf and think anything of it. Here we see him next to the Studio Series Sideways, which is another figure I'll be covering on the channel at some point. The Revoltech Baragon, which again is the older version of Baragon from 1965, but he is one of my favorites as well. And then finally an SH Monster Arts figure, again just to sort of give you a sense of scale and sizing. So, Baragon has a total of 14 from the core categories of reviewing, and divide that down, it's going to be a little under 5, but I am rounding up because I do not like dealing in decimals. So this Baragon, 2001, as he appeared in GMK, is going to be the first perfect 5 of the channel, which I think is very fitting of one of my favorites, and an absolutely beautiful figure. Thank you guys so much for checking out my channel. If you're interested in more toy content, definitely check out my Instagram. It's the same thing as this YouTube channel. It's @atrashbugtoys. You know, I post toys constantly. I want to try to do a tie-in post every time I post a video. But also on my channel, I like to share news and what's going on in the toy community, from dinosaurs, monsters, all the stuff that I'm really into. Definitely make sure you subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Of course, this is my first video on here, so I definitely could use any feedback for improvement. Let me know if there are monsters or figures that you want me to check out. Let me know if you have a favorite monster that you want me to keep an eye out for toys for reviews and everything. I love to talk about new stuff, and I have a massive collection, but I'm always on the lookout for new things as well. In addition, check out It Came From a Monster Movie podcast. Me and Henry just talked over there about Frankenstein Conquers the World last month. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, it is definitely a dated movie at this point, but it is a good one. I like to see my boy Baragon. Anyways, next week we'll take a look at Beasts of the Mesozoic, Utah Ceratops, which was a long one coming. Thank you again, and see you next time.